using negative exponents. So let's consider x squared over x to the fourth. Now that means we have x times x over x times x times x times x, right? Because exponents are repeated multiplication, where we take that base and we multiply by however many times that exponent tells us to. Now, if I have the same base, numerator, denominator, I can cancel out common factors, right? So like these x's can cancel out, and the second set of x's can cancel out. Now that leaves me with nothing in the numerator, which means it would just be a 1, right? It's kind of like our placeholder. But in the denominator, I have x squared. That's what I have left, right? 2 x's, repeated multiplication, so x squared. Now let's think about our quotient rule. Here, of x squared over x to the fourth, my base is x. So same base, and I'm dividing. I subtract the exponents. Numerator exponent minus denominator exponent, and I get x to the negative 2. Now, by our little math workage here down on the second line, I know that that same problem gives me 1 over x squared, which means x to the negative 2 is the same as 1 over x squared. Now, the way I like to talk about this is that if we have a number with a negative exponent, so let's say I have y to the negative third. By looking at that, I have a number, and if I want to make anything a fraction, I can just put it over 1. So if I have a fraction now, y to the negative third over 1, and one of those pieces, either the numerator or the denominator, has a negative exponent, to change that negative exponent to a positive, I put it in the other spot. So like right now, y to the negative third is in the numerator. So to make that exponent positive, I move it to the denominator. So I would say, okay, if I put y to the third in the other spot, so in the denominator, the negative exponent goes away. I need that placeholder, so I would have a 1. That works the same if it starts in the denominator. So maybe I had x squared over y to the negative 2. Well, now I have a fraction. My negative exponent is in the denominator. Well, to get rid of that, I want to put it in the numerator. Well, x squared already has a positive, so it's going to stay there. So this would simplify to x squared, y squared. Okay, all right, let's do a few. So the quotient property, don't forget the quotient property is if I have the same base, I subtract. Always numerator exponent minus the denominator exponent, always. Okay, so let's simplify. X to the 6th over x to the 9th. Well, if I'm simplifying this, I start with the same base, 6 minus 9, because 6 is my numerator exponent. So that gives me x to the negative third. Generally, we don't want negative exponents. So if I make that a fraction by putting it over 1, I can see my negative exponent is in the numerator. So to change it to be a positive exponent, I put it in the other position, which in this case would be the denominator. So I would end up with 1 over x to the third, which kind of makes sense, right? I have 3 extra x's in the bottom, so that's where they are. In letter B, we're going to deal with our product property, which means if I multiply with the same base, I'm adding the exponents. So I'm going to start by taking negative 3 plus 2 plus negative 4. So negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1, plus negative 4 gives me negative 5. So this simplifies to be x to the negative 5th. As a fraction, that's over 1. If I want to get rid of my negative exponent, I will put it in the other position. So I will end up with 1 over x to the 5th. Let's get into a couple exponents here. So I have x squared y to the 4th over x y to the 8th, z to the 2nd. So let's go base by base. So first, let's deal with our x's. I have x, if there's no exponent, right, our denominator has an x by itself. So that's like x to the 1st. So 2 minus 1 just gives me x to the 1st. Okay, so I just have x. Then I do my y's. So I have y to the 4 minus 8, which is y to the negative 4. Now, you can handle the z's a couple of different ways. I would say, well, there's no z's in the numerator, so my z squared is going to just stay z squared in the denominator. If you say, well, it's like having a z to the negative, a z to the 0 in the top. So that would be like saying 0 minus 2 gives you a negative 2. it's still going to put it in the denominator, right? Either way. Okay, so with what I have now, xy to the negative fourth over z squared, I have a negative exponent. So if I take that y to the negative fourth and move it, right? It's in the numerator, so I move it to the denominator. Then I would have x over y to the fourth, z to the second.